Alright, let's try some tips on setting up points on these Tecumseh engines. First off, check out the manual. Okay, to properly time an engine with adjustable timing, follow these steps. Turn the engine over until rubbing block on the points is on the high side of cam, not at top dead center. I keep seeing people say, go to top dead center and set your points. Well, if you've got this just sitting in there and you're setting it, and even if you have it in the proper location depending on the timing, you will not be on the high side of the cam. You'll be just right on it. So you could set your points at 20 thousandths, and then look, it moves again when you go to the high side of the cam. So make sure you're doing that. Okay, the next thing is, on the points themselves, you really need to use Tecumseh OEM original parts. If you can find them, and you still can, buy those over buying any of those crap Stens parts or any aftermarkets. A lot of times the wear blocks might not be the same size, the springs aren't bent correctly, and they'll ground out about 3/4 of the way through as it comes all the way up, so you'll get this real quick spark and it won't be enough to really run the engine, and it'll screw you up. Lots of things like that. I've had the bases break real easy putting them on. Next thing is, when you're putting it all in there, that's the square head with the notch. Make sure it's in the right location, and even if you're not putting the wires on yet because you're going to do the timing, tighten that up and get it tight, like it's just like it's supposed to be, because that puts all the tension and seats everything correctly. Next thing is, on your stator plate, you want to make sure there's a lip. I can show you on here. There's a lip on these blocks, and you want to make sure that the stator plate actually seats in there. And you would think you can't screw that up, but you can, especially with the wires behind. Sometimes a wire, depending on where there's run, might pinch there, and you could get it just a little cockeyed, and you can still get those bolts in and tighten them down. Ask me how I know. I've done it before. Okay, so now that you got it on there, and see, I've got this loose, but you need to have it fairly snug still to set the points. So, because it needs to be seated so nothing's moving, no movement, just like if it's a running engine. So we're going to make sure that we're at the high side of the cam, and if you look up here, that means we're well after top dead center. We're probably 20 thousandths, 25 thousandths past top dead center, and now we're at the high side. Now you want to set it at 20 thousandths, and a tight 20 thousandths would be fine. So I go 19 and 20 and make sure I'm in there. As you can see, I had already set this. But to adjust it, of course, I mean, everybody should know this. This screw here loosens the base, and then you take the screwdriver and you can adjust there to there, and you never get it where you want it. And if you go a tight, like say set it at 18 and 19, and when you really tighten it down, a lot of times it'll open up a little bit and go to 20. So that's kind of how I try to do that. Now that this is all set, we're gonna do the timing. So I'm using a Tecumseh dial indicator gauge. You can use any kind of dial indicator though that comes straight down through, as long as you have it fixed over the piston so it can do its thing over the piston. The Tecumseh one utilizes the spark plug hole, which is back here when it's on there, so this little foot gets you onto the piston. And then you also need to use the correct foot depending on what engine you're using, because you can get a false reading because it might bottom out if you don't have the right foot on there when you're turning it back. Okay, so in order to do this, just putting the head on, light but snug. And when you're putting it in there, you want to make sure that you're going in and you know you're going to be over the piston. So you watch wherever that is. And this screws into the spark plug hole. You just want it so it's not wobbly. And then you push this down and make sure you give yourself a little room on your dial indicator up and down. We don't care where it's sitting at this point, and tighten it down. So now we want to find top dead center. So top dead center is there. Let me see if I can adjust it here so it just makes a little more sense to some people. We'll get it more up top. Do it again. Then you adjust the dial to the 0, you zero it out. Okay. Now the next thing you need for this, of course the wires need to be off of the points in order to do this, because that will ground out the system and give you won't let your ohm meter work. I'm just using an ohm meter. This is an automatic one, so it automatically switches to it, but you'll have to switch to ohm if you have a manual version. Okay, this is an H35, so it needs to be set at 65 thousandths before top dead center. So see, we're at 35 there, and that tells you something. If you're doing an HS40. You're going to be on this side. You're going to be looking to be more on this side with that kind of spacing, where the H35s and stuff will be. Or we're going to have to turn this counterclockwise. So loosen these up again just a hair, just so you got movement. And we're going to go backwards a little bit. That's probably right about there is good. Snug them again. And start backing it down. Okay, now I'm just a little bit above 70 thousandths, so I've got to make some final adjustments. Any little movement really screws you up. Alright, I got it just a tick over 65. You want to go back. I like to go back up a couple times and just keep checking it, and it's as simple as that. Now, it's a good idea to take this back out and maybe run it through its cycle. Just make sure everything's good again if you want, but that's pretty much it. As long as you had everything tight, that's it. Now you can put your wires back on, put your gasket that goes in there on, put the cover on, put the keyway on, set the flywheel, and check your spark. And a lot of times what I'll do is, you don't have to sit there and pull start it to see if you got spark. You can put the flywheel on and just give it a good turn with your hand, as long as you don't have to, keep the plug out. And just when you get, you're going to come to the top dead center and it's going to spark right in that area, you give it just a good fling and you'll see a nice big fat spark. If not, you might want to double check your work, but you should see that even just by doing that And I hope that helps.